Good afternoon. Welcome back to the next episode of Tattered. This is the 11th one I've done, and after 11 episodes, I wanted to take a little step back and just kind of talk about what we're doing, where we're going from here. Not because the mission has changed, because it hasn't. If anything, it's become clearer. You know, when I started talking about Tattered, I knew it was about a book. I knew it was about my story, and I knew it was the reason my life that really changed me, tested me, and it almost broke me. Almost broke parts of me I didn't know could break. But as the conversations continued, and officers, former officers, family members, leaders, friends, police chiefs who got my number, Lord only knows how, when they started reaching out, it became pretty obvious. Tattered is not just about one story. I am not the only officer who's gone through something like this. In fact, if you're in law enforcement, you probably know 3 or 4 guys or gals that have gone through something like this, where their institution just cut them out, let them hang out to dry, and took the cowardly way out. So it's not about one story, but it is about what happened when the line frays. You know, we talk about the thin blue line and how proud we are to be members of the line, and sometimes that line has a cost. It's about the officer who still shows up every day, still answering calls, doing their job well, but carrying more than anybody around him realizes. It's about the supervisor who thinks something may be off, but is afraid to say something, doesn't quite know how to say, step in, and gets that "I'm fine" response, and doesn't follow it up with a conversation. Maybe it's a command staff member who's has to remember policy, process, and liability are not the same thing as leadership. Absolutely not. It's the retired officer who still carries things no one ever asked him about. You know, the average police officer lives 20 years less than the average person, and they live 5 years after retirement. There's a reason for that. And it's not all about fast food. It's about families, because a lot of times the family will see the change before an agency does. They'll know something's going on with dad or mom, or they'll see the drinking, they'll see the other stuff going on in the background, the isolation when they self-isolate. It's about those families and the silence that grows around those good people, and they all assume somebody else will check on that officer. And we all know what assuming does, right? That is the part I keep coming back to. Silence is not neutral. In this profession, silence can become dangerous, not because people don't care, but because people get busy. God, we're so busy all the time. We've always got some project or something's got to be done, or a call for service, or an arrest, or a court. People get uncomfortable. And then when an officer says, "Hey, I'm fine," living the dream, right? Living the dream. That's another one. Like, I'm fine. Living the dream is another reason to dig in deeper. They assume that a leader is going to handle it, and they assume the family knows what they do, and they assume someone else made the call. But in law enforcement, we're all leaders. Put one officer on the scene, that man is in charge, or woman is in charge. They're a leader. So if you're in law enforcement today, you are a leader. That expectation doesn't matter what's on your collar or what's on your sleeve. You're a leader, and if you need to be a leader for one of your friends and step up and say, "I think he needs help. I'm going to get him help. I'm going to find out what's going on," then do it. Don't assume it's someone else's job. You're a leader. It's your job. Because sometimes nobody does it. And Tattered is sort of my attempt to push back on it. The book is one part. The podcast is another. The posts, the conversations I've been having, one-on-one messages, speaking on it, leadership discussions, all of it comes back to the same idea. The thin blue line is thin enough. We cannot afford to lose people. 5-1, we kill ourselves. 5-1. That can't be acceptable to anyone. 5-1. We cannot afford to lose our folks to this silence anymore. Pride, fear, bad leadership, isolation, false belief that asking for help means they're weak. We've got to get past it. Generationally, we've got to get past it. And I'll say this, the wellness space is really, the words have entered our lexicon. We're talking about it now. Really, over the last, 7 years, 10 years maybe, it's become a thing, right? We have peer support and follow-up critical incidents with peer support. And I'm not poo-pooing that at all. I'm on peer support. I do peer support meetings with other agencies and help their officers and dispatchers and civilians get through it. But there's more to it than that. We can't just wait on a critical incident. We've got to be addressing things beforehand, building relationships with our officers, building relationships with the peer team, so that when something does happen, we have a go-to. We have a plan in place. Who's going to talk to that person? Well, I know him really well. I'll take care of it. But those relationships aren't built with "I'm fine." There's strength in surviving something, and especially when you didn't think you would survive. There's strength in admitting that the job takes a piece of you. I remember one night having a conversation with a young officer, and we had gotten into a vehicle pursuit. Vehicle was all the girlfriend's vehicle had been shot up by the boyfriend, and they got into a vehicle pursuit, and she was on the phone with the driver of the car. And I was in the pursuit, assisting with controlling the pursuit, and I'm talking to her in one hand, and someone else was driving, talking to her in one hand, talking to the radio in the other. And at one point, I look at the driver, and I'm like, dude, this guy's going to kill himself, and she's going to be on the phone. And sure enough, the pursuit terminates with stop sticks, and the driver shot himself, still on the phone with the young officer. And she was pretty shook up. I called her in that night, and I talked to her, and I said, look, you did everything right. Everything you did was done the right way. You did all you could to get him to surrender and to turn himself over. And the blame here is on me. I put you in that position because you were just the right person at the right spot, and you ended up on the phone with him, and there was no one else to take it, to give it to. There was no time to call a negotiator. You did the best you could. But when you become a police officer, one of the things you need to know is this job is going to take something from you. It may be an innocence. It may be a sense of fairness, but it's going to take something away from you. And I told her that night, I said, tonight it took your innocence. Tonight you see that there are some times that we just cannot help people. And sure enough, she's going on to do a great job. She's a fine young officer. But I'll never forget that talk that night. And it did give her a day or two off just to kind of think it through and talk to her a few times. But it's strength in saying I'm not okay. And I know it's not easy. I mean, it took me months before, the woman I share my life with decided to tell me that I needed to do something. There's leadership in hearing that from someone else and not walking away from it. I'm a deputy chief. When an officer comes to me with a personal problem and I'm put on my peer support hat and rip off my deputy chief name tag, that takes a lot for an officer to come to a deputy chief. And the ones who have, after we solved the problem or got them through it, I looked at him and brought him in and I said, I want to tell you something. I am so proud of you for coming to me with this, because I know that took a special amount of courage, not just going to your fellow officer or even your sergeant, but going to your deputy chief and saying, hey, boss, I got a problem. That courage is remarkable, and I see it in some of our young officers. When you do hear something from someone, you can't walk away from it. You've got to address it. You've got to get them help. And it matters to me so much because I know what isolation felt like. I know what it feels like when that badge comes off and all of a sudden the phone stops ringing, your text messages don't get returned. I know what it feels like to wonder whether the things you've spent your life doing are going to be there. The identity you build around the profession, will it mean anything? But I also know this. The sun will rise tomorrow. That's not a slogan, it's a lifeline. Sometimes tomorrow doesn't fix everything. Most of the time, it's not. But tomorrow gives you another chance to breathe, to think, to call someone, to let someone in, to take one more step, to enter that counseling, to get help, to find a buddy that can take you diving, whatever it is that gets your mind off of it and relaxes you. That's why I keep saying stay in the fight. Not because the fight is easy, not because you're supposed to be tough all the time, not because you should carry it alone, but because your story is not over. The worst day is not your whole life, and your lowest moment should not be your final chapter. Your career, your pain, your mistakes, and investigation, trauma, silence, none of the things are going to define you unless you let them. As leaders, we have responsibility here. We cannot keep saying officer wellness matters and wait till someone's in crisis before we act. Wellness is not a poster in the hallway. Peer support is not a check-the-box program. Leadership is not sending one email after something bad happens. It's making a decision before silence makes it for you. It means asking twice. It means noticing when someone changes. understanding that the officer who's angry may actually be hurt. You know, I joke that sarcasm is just another gift I provide because of years in law enforcement. I got sarcasm, and God help her, my poor daughter does too. But what I have found over time is that many of your sarcastic officers, the ones that are the hardest to talk to, they're not that way because they don't care. They're that way because they care. But they've been pushed down so many times that it becomes sarcasm. But if you really look at it, the people that are out there that are saying, I'm not sure this is the right thing to do, this will never work, the reason might be because they're the most caring people you have. So that quiet guy, he may be sinking. He may be hurt. When he says, I'm good, that's what he thinks you want to hear. I'm living the dream. I'm fine. So ask it again. Dig in. We're investigators, right? Telling you to investigate your people when you think something's up. Show up for them. Make a phone call. Make a text. Do something to stay in touch. Sit with them. Remember, sometimes you just sit in silence. Sometimes it's just about presence and about knowing that you gave enough to come over and spend a few minutes with somebody. Don't outsource your compassion to policy. And that's where Tattered's going from here. We're going to keep talking about survival, but also responsibility. Because how our people have been led is part of our problem. And that's something that our leaders have to acknowledge. We're going to keep talking about our officers, but also our leaders. We're going to talk about trauma and recovery. And there's all kinds of trauma. Trauma is trauma. Responding to trauma creates trauma. But there is recovery. There are ways to deal with it, but we have to ask for help. Because here's something that the public probably doesn't know. Police officers don't know everything. Yeah, we're lawyers, psychiatrists, mental health workers, police officers, traffic cops, and a dozen other professions that we have to answer questions for. But we don't know everything. So we're going to keep talking about some of the hardest parts of this profession, not so we could be stuck in them, but because telling the truth is where our healing needs to start. And it's not about being anti-police. It's exactly the opposite. It's because I believe in this profession. And I believe we have to take better care of our people inside of it. I believe in accountability. We are a profession which is allowed to take a life. We should be held to a higher standard on accountability. But we also need while that higher standard is important, to remember that our people are human. And humans make mistakes. Did they make a mistake of the heart or the head? That's the decision. Because the badge matters beyond the person behind it. Because service matters and survival matters. And after 11 episodes, this is a bit of a refresh. Tattered's still about the book. I'm happy to talk about it and, tell you whatever. But it's bigger than the book. It's about the officer in the driveway who can't face his family, who can't say, I need help, who can't go talk to him. The leader who's got a choice to make. It's about the family waiting at home, the retiree who still hears echoes. It's about the person nobody thinks would understand if they told the truth. And remind them that somebody does. You're not alone. You're not done. You still matter. The blue line is thin enough. So stay in the fight. And remember, we are the peacemakers.